Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Audio Product Development Alliance. I am Roger Shively from Shively Acoustics International, and this is the APDA, your gateway to the audio product development. It's the only organization that's focused exclusively on audio product development education and providing current and relevant content that can be experienced in person, live online, and on demand. And it's combined with a valuable cross-industry knowledge sharing. The APDA serves as a networking hub for the audio industry and offering access to experts and colleagues for professional development. The APDA is where we come to learn how to build relationships and build better audio products. We talk about design, measurement, simulations, supply chain, automotive applications like we will today, and then headphones, earphones, wireless technology, and we also touch on the industry standards. Online with us today from the APDA is Steve Willenberg
Hi,
from
Roger. How
OnePlay.
are you doing today?
Hey, Steve, doing good.
Good.
And also with us is Dave Lindberg from DB Enterprises and the THD Podcast. Hey, Dave, how you doing?
That's right. How's it going?
And Joel Martins from Audio Express is our media partner. And Adam Levinson supports us from Levinson Consulting. And thank you today for Spencer, who is producing us on this live talk. We're recording this as well, so you can always go back to YouTube and see it again. You can share it, like it for sure. Join us often. And we also have a chance for you to join our LinkedIn group. So if you get a chance to, please go there, request to get in, and we'll let you in. It should be on the screen for you to see. Uh, and during this live talk today, we're going to have the comment sections open there if you want to put your comments in and questions into the LinkedIn group if you're a member, or in the YouTube channel, we have the chat and we'll get your questions and comments from there as well. So that's how we'll put things forward. And also, I'll take that off the screen for us so we can talk about what's coming up next. What's coming up next is for the APDA in July. We'll have an event, a live talk again. We're probably going to be talking about Bluetooth LE audio at that point. And in August, we'll revisit Terrace one more time. It's always fun. Right, Dave? It's always fun. It's always fun.
Yeah.
So today, we want to welcome in Matt Marchese from the
Thank you,
Audio
Roger.
Foundry. Hey, how you doing? Matt
Thanks for
is
having me.
great. I'm glad you could make it too, actually. Matt, you're sitting in the UK. You are the senior director of Tymphany's business unit, and you're a founding member of the Audio Foundry. And our topic today, the title is Advancing Automotive Audio Through Collaboration. And I know that the Audio Foundry is essentially a collaborative makerspace that's designed for prototyping and to doing advanced research. I think today we'd like to see how those forces come together, how the forces of innovation work in an automotive industry that is, in a collaborative way, and how that can accelerate some advanced audio applications and then enhance what's going on in the in-cabin audio experience. So I'm glad you could make it. You are in the UK, if I understand correctly, right? So
That's
at
yeah,
least
that's
today.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was actually fortuitous because normally I'm in the Bay Area, although I was living here in Wales for the last 2.5, almost 3 years. As one of the missions was to basically set up the Audio Foundry, which I know we'll talk about. Sort of, it's
Yeah.
the idea of the Audio Foundry, and it's also not sort of just a philosophical idea of bringing collaboration, trying to advance audio in automotive, but it's also a physical space. And again, fortuitous enough to be in our location, our primary location in the UK in Bridgend, Wales. And this, in fact, is not a backdrop. I'm actually sitting in the Audio Foundry space near
Okay.
the event, the innovation area, and also have some unique tools, which I'll share with you guys here
Yeah.
during the
So
discussion.
I think some of us are clearly familiar, especially we know you well and the Audio Foundry. But for those who don't, who aren't familiar, the first question is, what is the Audio Foundry? And then how is it different from a traditional supplier to an OEM, and how is it different from any other innovation studio that might exist for automotive audio? So I'll just kind of let you jump into that if you like,
Sure.
and we'll start talking through it and see what we can learn a little bit. And like I say, everyone, please feel free to send out our questions and comments, and we'll make sure that Matt gets them. So thank you.
Sure. Okay, well, thanks. So, well, basically, the Audio Foundry is an automotive audio consortium that's made up of OEMs, tier ones, and technology providers. So again, this is really not a supplier consortium by any means. As I mentioned, the OEMs are also involved in this. And the pure mission of the Audio Foundry is to advance automotive audio, where, in a lot of cases, audio is sort of the lower, the bottom of the totem pole when a vehicle gets planned. And we also know that, many of at the OEM levels and the tier one levels, that there's a lot of time impoverishment with the engineers, and they're trying to really just focus on delivering the next vehicle program. And in a lot of cases, we don't get the opportunity to work on, innovative aspects of audio. Arguably, there are things that are changing. We're seeing, partitioned audio, 3D audio, spatial audio. We're starting to look at packaging, non-traditional hardware in non-traditional locations of the vehicle. This is obviously a big trend, and we saw this new trend in automotive audio, and the idea of it really being a fantasy to think that one OEM, one supplier, or one technology provider could, solve all of these very unique problems in automotive audio, wasn't going to happen. So we said that we're probably better off as a collaborative in order to do this. So this was the basis of the Audio Foundry. How is it different? Well, it's definitely a change from the traditional tier ones, if you want, the full service supplier. You want to think of this really as a deconstructed full service supplier. And that model of full service supply has worked in the industry for many, many years, and it's still a great model where you approach, one particular entity, and you're buying hardware, you're buying software, you're buying DSP. In some cases, you're buying a brand. And, really the idea that a collaboration, so if you have sort of the best and brightest in audio, you have all these new companies, all these new tech companies that are coming up into automotive audio, new players that we haven't seen in traditional audio. So the idea is that if you have this collaborative, whether you're an OEM, a tier one, or a technology provider, and you're trying to create a unique experience in the vehicle, or you're trying to create a unique feature in the vehicle, you can then become the general contractor. Right? So you can pick and choose the companies and the unique technologies that each of those companies bring to create something very unique. So if, again, it's this idea of, it's a collaborative, and it's utilizing the model of what we're calling a deconstructive full service supply model, basically.
Okay, that's good. Quick question about that. So it's a collaborative, and how does someone engage? How does someone who wants to engage, or someone who's already in the industry and trying to find a way to use this? I mean, how does an OEM come? How does a tier one come? How does a consultant come in? How do people engage with you?
Sure. I think, we started the Audio Foundry about 3 years ago. And when we started it, it started with both Tymphany and DSP concepts. And it was actually at the last AES show in Detroit. What was that? 2 years ago now, I believe.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Where we had a very unique automotive audio development buck, which I have here behind me, which is the rig. I'll talk about that later. Where Tymphany was highlighting some very unique hardware, transducer hardware. And of course, we worked very closely with DSP Concepts, and they had installed in this automotive audio development buck Audio Weaver. And when we demoed that at the show, we got quite a reception from a number of different of the attendees. And we said, my goodness, I think we have something very unique here. Let's start building on that. So we were very deliberate about bringing on other members, that had certain capabilities at that point. And now, really, we're really expanding, out quite a bit. We have members that are, MEMS microphone suppliers, a variety of different software suppliers. We even have an automotive audio market research firm, product planning and research firm that is now a part of the entity. We have a company like Sonified, who traditionally comes, is from the French tier one supplier Trevs that traditionally does soft trim panels in vehicles and is basically trying to capture more value in bringing audio to the vehicle, utilizing exciters. So we have a really nice wide variety of different members. Some of them, as I mentioned, we were very deliberate to approach to see if they wanted to join us, and others are joining because they see the value in collaboration. It's something that they may not be able to do themselves to go to market as a new entity. Or again, I like to use the Sonified example, is that joining the Audio Foundry really gave them validity in automotive audio to approach the market. And there's a lot of great success stories, since they had joined the Audio Foundry, that we're now doing joint presentations and demonstrations together. So if you're interested in joining the Audio Foundry, you could certainly reach out to myself. We do have a website as well. If you searched audiofoundry.com, you can then register for a contact, and we'll follow up with you quickly.
And Matt, is there any costs associated with joining the organization, or is it more collaborative effort, where companies support it via the activities that they do, the various programs that you guys are working on?
Sure. So yeah, there is a annual membership fee that each of the members pay into. We have various levels. So we have a 50K, which is our top tier. And what that gets you is access to, obviously, being a part of the consortium. It gets you access to, the monthly meetings that we have. And then, of course, it also gets you access to the facility. And this, again, is the primary facility. And I'll mention here in a moment, we're actually expanding facilities beyond just the facility that I'm here in Bridgend, Wales. And you might want to think about it like a gym membership. So if you pay into your annual membership, not only are you part of the club, you also have access to these types of facilities, where in this facility, for example, we have an innovation space, an event center. We have two very large vehicle bays, which are behind me, a 3D printing farm, a wood shop, a metal shop, conference space, desk space, all of that. And we're now starting to expand beyond just this facility. But if you're a member, you pay your annual memberships, you come and go as you please in these facilities. The idea is that if you're interested doing in your own particular innovation as your own company, that's fine. You're more than welcome to do that. But we highly, highly encourage collaborative projects amongst the members.
Yeah, and I would think for smaller companies that are just trying to get into the space, that's a huge value, to be able to have access to the tools and, just the buck that's sitting behind you, as a cost associated with it. So that's a huge thing for companies to be, I would think, very interested in.
Yeah, that's exactly it. That's exactly it. So there's a 50K, there's a 20K, there's a 5K per project, and we actually just opened up a newer tier also. This is specifically a bit more for the OEMs. So for example, Polestar is one of our members. We have a few others that will be joining here soon. We wanted to make it a little bit easier for some of the OEMs to join as well, because here's the problem. You have a number of different projects, ongoing projects within the Audio Foundry, and not enough vehicle rigs or vehicles to actually do the implementation of these sort of new innovations. So in order to help incentivize even more OEM participation, we're allowing them to come to, with a vehicle. And of course, that doesn't mean just drop off a vehicle and now you're a member. You also need to do the wrenching, on the innovation projects. That is going to be a requirement. But we do want to make it a little bit easier for them. So we have, 4 different tiers that we're utilizing right now. I think we are, if I'm not mistaken, I think we're 15 members. And actually, one of the main reasons that I'm here in the UK this week is that we have our second annual Audio Foundry event, where here we'll host OEMs, tier ones, technology providers, members, and aspirational members, people that are considering joining, that want to get a better sense of what we're doing here. So what we'll do, we'll also introduce a couple of new members that I can't share just yet, because we're revealing that on Thursday of this week.
Okay.
So,
And
Sounds like
for
an exciting
the
event.
for the technology partners, is there a vetting process? Because I was just thinking of like you guys are kind of de-risking the fact of a startup plus a startup is a failure. So if you have like the structure that you guys are presenting, it could kind of de-risk it. But is there a vetting process for these new technology vendors?
yeah, to some extent, I think, we have, recently looking to set up a bit more of a steering committee. I mean, admittedly, I think, Tymphany has been the largest investor of the Audio Foundry. We've been, really, trying to push this, this concept forward. We're realizing that, the membership is growing and that we're now needing to have a little bit more of governance than we needed in the past. So we are starting to look at bringing a steering committee together to help vet in some of these decisions. I mean, ideally, we want to have one of each, feature or thing, right?
Yeah.
So we don't want to have a lot of, too much overlap in that case. We wouldn't preclude anybody from joining unless it, maybe it didn't make sense for some reason or another. But yeah, we will be going through probably a larger vetting process because, for the last 2 years, we've turned up with a big booth at CES and, people would approach and say, well, what is this thing? Explain this to us. And last year we had people coming up to us saying, we now know what this is. We want to be a part of it. So it's like I said, we're now needing to take on some sort of a vetting process. We don't know what that is completely yet, but we're starting to set up our steering committee to address that.
But quickly,
Okay.
you can't mention their name, whoever's joining you on Thursday. What type of companies are you attracting and bringing in new? You mentioned, I think, a research company for, you said product development research, was it? I'm sorry,
Yeah, product planning.
product
Yeah,
planning.
so
Thank you. Okay.
yeah, that company is actually called the Car Lab, based in Southern California.
Okay.
You may have seen them or heard them because they've been with us as a partner since we started. And the reason why we thought they were an interesting partner is because you think about it, this in so many cases, we develop technology for, automotive or other, and for the sake of doing it, right? Because we think it might be cool, and we develop it and we all pat each other on the back and say, wow, this is great. And then only to find out later that it's bolted to the showroom floor, right?
Yeah.
So what as part of the Audio Foundry, one of our key value proposition or key value North Poles, if you will, is product planning. So before, if we're going to do a project, or if we're going to get, members are going to do projects, we always encourage to at least start with some sort of a workshop to address product planning. What are we planning and who are we planning it for? So, the Car Lab is quite good at that sort of activity. That's sort of their background.
Okay.
And then once we actually develop the technology and we develop a proof of concept, guess what? We then go to the consumers and we test it with consumers. So the idea that you have a fully vetted audio system, from product planning to delivery to the consumer, we feel this is very important. Otherwise, let's not develop it, right?
Right. That's actually good. I mean, it sort of fills in all the things you need. As you said, this is a deconstruction of a one, a full service tier one. It's now creating a full service group, I guess is what you're essentially looking at. So, and the type of companies coming in, Dave brought up, is it startups? Is it OEMs? You say you have at least one OEM, but I think maybe more.
Yeah.
What is your grouping? What do you think it's going to grow into as well, I think?
Yeah, I think it's going to be quite a mix. I mean, we have, Duroc, for example, ADI, Blue Axe, which is, an R&D product development, company, DSP Concepts. You have, which is also interesting, you have a newcomer, as you know, Tymphany comes from, the consumer electronics space. And we have a strong, partnership, SoC partnership with MediaTek, for example. And, MediaTek is, I'm sure you've seen in many different, releases on LinkedIn and so forth, that they're very anxious to get into, automotive, automotive audio. And so they joined the Foundry. So I think we're going to start seeing some of these non-traditional, more and more of these non-traditional players in the space that want to participate in automotive.
And on that topic, Matt, one of the things that people may not realize is the high scale, going from a consumer industry into an automotive. There's a lot of things that need to be taken into consideration. And I know, personally, via Tymphany that, there was a lot to learn. Is there anything that the Audio Foundry group is doing in terms of mentoring new companies when they come in, just to make sure that they understand, what they're getting into, because the requirements are obviously so much different. And there's a lot of things, not only from a product side, but also from a process side, from a product, quality perspective, the things that need to be done from a factory when you're manufacturing this stuff. There's a whole list of things that you need to understand before you can be, what I would say, successful in that automotive space.
Yeah, this is sort of somewhat inherent, I think, in terms of some of the projects that get done. I know, having just lived through this, even though my background is automotive, I come from automotive, but been with Tymphany, for 12 years now. Started on the consumer side, and trust me, we have a lot of, we've been in the automotive space now for about 7-8 years, and we're still learning, right? And we have plenty of scars to prove it, because, moving from the consumer mindset to an automotive mindset is quite different, as you say. Is that happening in a project to project level? I would say yes. I mean, it's not sort of so specific that we're, doing trainings or, things you need to know kind of thing. You have to remember too, that the Audio Foundry, how it typically works is we have these, monthly membership meetings where we share industry trends, or we talk about, new technology, or we talk about the challenges as what you're talking about. And then at the end of those discussions, we ask the members who has a project that they want to initiate. Okay, and then that's how this happens. So not every member is involved in every project. A member might initiate a project and ask the membership, consortium, who can help me and who wants to participate, right? So we have projects going on in the Audio Foundry that I'm not even aware of, and they're happening with, other members. So that's sort of the openness of this consortium. So that's basically how it works. And if I can give you one example of this, and this is very public and open, is our Tymphany's parent company, Premax, right, is a large Taiwanese consumer electronics company that is most notably known for camera module technology, so things you'll find in your phone and your laptop and whatnot. And Tymphany and Premax collectively as an entity have been delivering to the conferencing segment. Well, and during one of the Audio Foundry memberships, we said we want to initiate conferencing in the vehicle. We, the Audio Foundry, and Tymphany Premax want to be to initiate it, and we asked who would join us, who will join us, and we had, I think, 6 or 7 different members that said we want to be a part of that. And in fact, the Monday following this year's CES, all of those members came back to our U.S. Design Center in the Bay Area. And as I was mentioning earlier, we sat down and we created a 8-page product brief. We product planned what is conferencing in the vehicle. What is it? How does it get implemented? What are the use cases? Who are we planning for? What vehicle segments? Who's the target buyer? And now we're off and running, and we're developing, our version of that, which we'll showcase at CES this next year. So
Okay.
that's basically how it works.
Yeah, no, that's a great thing. Great value that can be provided to a lot of different companies for sure.
So it brings to mind though, so you've got a lot of people working together. You mentioned a few of them. If someone has intellectual property, how do you keep a trusting environment, and how do you share that with this group? Everyone works under an NDA, but it sounds like you would have a multi-layered NDA if you had to keep something. And if there's innovation that's coming, where does the intellectual property belong? are OEMs engaging in that, or are you bringing the OEMs in at the end, or how does that work for, when you're doing some innovative work, and how do you work to keep things secure and trustful in
Sure,
the group?
it's a great question, Roger. And in fact, it's the most commonly asked question that we get.
Okay.
And the answer is actually it's quite simple. It's we the Audio Foundry, we set up this as its own membership, right? We provide the venue, we provide the facility, we provide the ideology behind it. But if you were an OEM or a tier one or a technology provider and you decide that you join a particular project or you initiate a project, any of the IP would need to get sorted within that group that's agreed to do that project.
Mhm.
Because frankly, we don't want to get involved in every project and who's got which IP. That's for the members really to decide, who owns it or is it shared IP or whatnot. So it's
So every project that comes about within the membership, and maybe it could be two or three, maybe there's more, they put together their own terms of collaboration before they begin that project. So when everybody was sitting around, which you were talking about, how do we do the ideas of, or how do you create a conferencing in a car? Was that part of that planning, then the collaborative interaction and the sharing of information that came out of that? Or is that something that, you know, is there a generalized collaborative agreement, or is it going to be on each project that gets generated?
each project will have its own unique, discussion amongst the members. But you actually you bring up another interesting point that I think it's worth mentioning. The Audio Foundry, our initial concept was that this was going to be the makerspace, the sandbox. We're going to grow innovation here in this space, and that is certainly happening. There's no question. But what we're sort of also finding is that you have right from the get, you have unique technologies that each of these OEMs, tier ones, or whomever already have. But if we're combining some of these things, then they become even more interesting, right? So you have projects that are, I hate to use, well, I'm going to use the term mashup, right? Of like, let's put our bits together, and man, if we did that, this would create something very, cool and unique. And then you have other types of projects which are more what if, what could, right? And I'd say those are fewer and far between than what we're finding today. But I can tell you, as part of this initial steering committee discussion, we want to bring more of the the innovation side of it, the startup side of it. And I suspect once we get into that, we'll probably be dealing more with more specific IP related things. So far, that has not been a major issue for any of the members today.
Yeah, and so I guess it also asks the questions like, since everyone has their own agenda and their own IP that they're going to maybe share, but there are open standards also that exist. Do you try to work with an open standard as much as possible so that there's a lot of sharing? Do you have an opinion or a point of view on what about open standards? Do we want to try to generate new open standards through this group somehow, or try to, if it's an innovation, do we want to share it with the world?
Well, yeah, to whatever extent we can, we definitely do. I mean, obviously, we want to respect any IP that's core IP that people bring to the table. But again, it is all about collaboration. I mean,
Yeah.
we encourage that as much as possible.
Good.
And like I say, even when we talk about projects, you have in some cases people say, I really prefer we're going to do this together, but I don't want to reveal it until it's done. In most cases, you have people that let's talk about it, let's promote it. This is the Audio Foundry really gives this venue to really get out of the mothership, to get out of the traditional thinking, to be very open, and that's what this place is. This is all about that open standards. If we can do more of that, then all the better, I would say.
Well,
let's
it would
go
be a
ahead.
sandbox for, I think as a company, you need to take a look at, what the goals are of what you're trying to accomplish as that company. But what tools are needed. And, I see the Audio Foundry as, a tool, if you will, that people can extend and really start thinking outside the box versus the traditional let's put all the engineers in a room and try to come up with an idea, which doesn't necessarily lend itself to, getting innovative products.
Yeah.
So I
It's
think that's, go ahead, Matt. Go ahead. Yeah,
Yeah,
sorry.
it's just coming from a an audio hardware supplier. I can tell you, it's just interesting to me because since we've been engaging in this, if you think we've been packaging automotive audio speakers in the same locations, in the same sizes, same locations for the last 40 years, right? We relatively speaking, right? So from our side, we come, Tymphany comes from the consumer space, so we experiment with some of our consumer drivers, which we create to be automotive grade, of course, because you need to have that, and say what could you do? What could you do? So that's sort of been the Tymphany philosophy, and I think this is something that we're also strongly encouraging in the Audio Foundry is let's do something different.
Yeah,
How would you do it? Yeah.
yeah. I think that's your point that to change from the old way of doing it. You would probably use the word silo at some point to describe that because everyone's working in their own little area, but they can't collaborate unless they're willing to break out of that. And so what is the most critical type of collaboration right now in this? Is it did we cover a lot of that? I mean, loudspeaker locations, the new ways of communicating in a car. What is the most critical thing that you can think of right now that this collaboration is useful for? Any,
And
yeah.
while you're thinking that, the other question that I've got that's kind of an add-on to that is, with the advancements of, the AI tools that are out there, from a software side, we obviously hardware has been around, as you say, for more than 40 years, but, from a software side, I conceive some, probably some big innovations coming down the pipe, to be able to do some of the things acoustically within the cabin, that may not have been able to be done before.
Yeah, it's yeah, things are changing. I think yeah, from a what's the most important collaboration? I mean, there's so many different. I can tell you at the moment there are many different types of programs that stemming from some that are traditional, some are less traditional. A lot of discussions that happen within the Audio Foundry and some of its members is starting to talk about autonomous vehicles, right? So if I live in the Bay Area. If you went downtown San Francisco, you'll see Waymos, everywhere, or Zoox vehicles, right? So I think this idea of where it is from an audio perspective, how are things changing? If you're in an autonomous vehicle, at some point you're going to you have the passengers, sitting in a different position, exiting the vehicle than they were when they entered the vehicle, for example. And what is the content and things that are going to be wanted to be consumed there? What's the setup? How do we package it? I would say that one's kind of an interesting one. We talk about that from time to time. But again, the projects vary, quite
Yeah.
dramatically, I'd say.
So so we were talking, I mean, the topic that we gave the title of this was, the advancement of automotive development through collaboration, but how do we accelerate? I mean, because we know, at least I know, that OEMs are now challenging themselves to decrease their development time um, because it's too expensive, and they're trying to develop quicker and get to the market faster because their competition is getting to their biggest competition being in Asia, more likely, are getting there faster.
Mhm.
Is there something in this collaboration that you have that could accelerate that innovation, bring it in and work in that quicker turn? Say if I'm asking my engineers to develop something in half the time that they normally would in automotive, which is significant, is there something here that is an advantage and acceleration
Yeah.
accelerating the innovation?
100%. And in some cases, it's a very basic, basic need, right? If you look at the average transaction price of a vehicle, over the last, several years has gone up dramatically, right?
Mhm.
So yeah, what you say is correct. They want, the engineering teams are trying to reduce their development time, but boy, are they trying to reduce the cost, particularly for EV platforms, right? Where,
Yeah.
most of the EV platforms are not profitable. And in fact, this is kind of funny because this is, the Audio Foundry and Tymphany alike, get approached all the time specifically for some of those platforms because they need to save cost, right? What could you do from an innovative standpoint? In this idea of, it's not necessarily about the 32 speaker systems anymore, right?
Yeah.
How do you create, that's interesting enough if you're a luxury vehicle, but if you're an EV vehicle, which I'd also argue is probably a luxury vehicle, or your mid-tier sort of brand, you're looking for ways to cut your costs. So being able to have these discussions, to experiment on projects with a number of the members, to look at where those savings can be made, that's actually one of the big drivers for quite a few of the projects that we have here
Okay.
at the Audio Foundry. And I'll maybe jumping ahead here a little
Go
bit.
ahead. Go ahead.
One of the other, and this is true for this new category, this sensor fusion, idea. I mean, we hear this term, quite frequently, right? And that involves, audio, microphone, camera, lidar, sensing types of technologies. And I think it's becoming even more interesting. And it's not just audio related. How do we save cost on audio related items? But how do we save cost on, for example, if you have, the ultrasonic rear, bumper sensors in the back, well, can a camera, solve that problem? Can a camera do, 4 or 5 different features, right? Versus you have, individual component hardware that's meant to do one specific thing. Can you put in a camera, for example, and allow that to do multiple features kind of thing? So I think you're not seeing it just on the audio side, but I think we're also seeing it on, this idea of, sensor fusion, which I think is also a big trend.
So you're using the term sensory fusion. I'm not sure if half of us know what that means, but I believe what it is you're bringing in touch, feel, and hearing and visual senses. You're bringing all the sensories that we have, and trying to create an experience or an emotional engagement with the vehicle, not just through sound, but through touch and feel and vision. Is it
Sure.
basically what we're talking about? So it's all the senses together. So.
Yeah, I mean, maybe a very, simple example might be, you're starting to see, microphone modules on the outside of the vehicle,
Hmm.
right?
Mhm.
So if, let's say you're Volvo, right? You're the safety brand. So you have those situations where you pull up to a red light and you're making a right-hand turn, and a bicyclist comes along your body side in the curb, right? And maybe your blind spot detection warning goes off in your side mirror. But what if you're able to hear that person, right? It's an added sense, to the vehicle experience is mic pickup. So, I mean, maybe a very simple type of an example, but is, creating unique experiences, whether it be safety or adventure vehicle or whatever it is, through the use of, as you just also said, audio, camera, touch, feel, those types of things.
Okay. And this is a chance. I mean, I think what you're maybe you have a good example too. I mean, you've got some recent demos you've probably done. You've got some coming up. Is there an example that helps us kind of get a feel for how you brought maybe OEMs together? I think one of the things for most of us who are suppliers or consultants or, independent developers is that how do we reach the customer, which is the OEM? And
Mm-hmm.
we know that the ultimate customer we can influence and understand, but how do we get the one who's going to build it interested in what we're doing? Is there some examples that you have of how you brought in that key piece of what we're trying to do for it?
For the OEM specifically, is that
Yeah,
what you
yeah,
mean?
yeah. How
Yeah.
we engage with the OEMs through the Audio Foundry, that
Yeah.
or how can it be increased, or any good examples that you might want to
Yeah,
share?
as I mentioned, Polestar is currently the only OEM that has joined, but
Yeah.
I'm fully expect in the next, couple months that we'll have at least 2 others. And this has been predicated on the having a vehicle, so and them wanting to be associated with with audio, particularly the audio engineers. I mean, again, the whole idea of the Audio Foundry is to re-empower the automotive audio engineer, who are completely time impoverished and need the support. So I think you're going to see more OEMs in the Foundry in like I say, in the coming, well, between now and say the end of the year. So I think they see the benefit of the Audio Foundry because they get access to all of these different members, right? They've been so traditionally used to going to a specific tier 1 full service supplier, and basically that supplier offers these things, right?
Yeah.
And those things might be offered to many different OEMs at the same time, where here, they're starting to see the value of, I can go to this place and I can pick and choose all the relevant companies or technologies that I need to create my unique experience in the vehicle. And that by that allowing them to also be a part of it is through their membership through, a vehicle, donation or lending for, 12 to 18 months. So they can be a part of, of the discussion. They can take advantage of some of the technologies that some of the tech providers and the tier 1s bring. And they themselves can initiate projects, because you talk to any of the OEMs, whether they have one audio engineer or they have 20, none of them are able to get beyond the current development, right? You talk to every single one of them and they'll say, oh, we have this aspirational project list that we would love to go and experiment, but we don't have the time to do it. So this is sort of, becomes a really interesting, excuse for them to join, and then they get help. They get help to do the wrenching or do some of these developments, and they get to be creative. I think that's the most important part, is that you get to be creative.
Yeah, you take the boundaries away, and that's got to be an exciting thing for the engineering community.
Oh yeah, it's well, to be honest, it's like as far as I can tell, it's a breath of fresh air for them, because it's getting away from the traditional. And some of these discussions are very, very difficult. One of the things we've realized at Tymphany, I mean, it's all about package, right? And speakers don't want to be seen in the vehicle anymore. We're moving speakers out of door cards, so now we need to maintain the performance and package those somewhere else. I have these unique technologies that are coming into the vehicle that need to be supported by audio. It's a tremendous, at the OEM, it's a tremendous workload and task to try to solve all of these things on their own, or utilizing a traditional supply base, right? It just doesn't work. So the Audio Foundry, to many of them, is a breath of fresh air. It gives them, the opportunity to get help and to experiment, to do something different.
Yeah, I think, you go ahead, Dave. Sorry.
I was just going to say, and with giving people the flexibility to be creative, especially with sensor fusion, you could look at something like a camera module that's working towards in-car conferencing, perhaps, but then it could also double into a safety aspect, like detecting if they're falling asleep or something. Now, are there guardrails that need to be in place? I'm not an automotive expert, but because mission critical stuff probably falls into outside the entertainment section of the car. So is there guardrails that you guys help guide people on supervising, so the young enthusiasts don't get carried away and step on areas where they're not supposed to?
Absolutely. Yeah. Like I said, if you look at the membership list, I mean, most people on that list have some footing in automotive and understand what some of those requirements are. As I mentioned, so Premax is one of the, is the camera module, ironically, they're a camera supplier, but they're part of the Audio Foundry. Well, we think these things sort of go hand in hand, like, in creating, audio visual types of experiences in the car. That's the funny thing, is like, you go to most of the OEMs and you have the audio team sit on one end of the campus, and you have like the camera people that sit on the other end of the campus, and they're not talking to each other. This is, I know, Roger, you talked about silos.
Yeah.
It's classic. It's classic, OEM, which no fault of their own, but, the idea of, bringing these things together a bit more, I think becomes, more interesting. So you have people, in the industry that are currently delivering, traditional hardware to the OEMs that know the rules and regulations and things. So,
yeah,
Okay.
I think what you've identified is definitely what's happened. I mean, what we've known in the recent past is that there were one or two monoliths that were tier ones, and the OEMs have slowly said, "No, we need to do this ourselves. We need to pick and choose what we need." And I think, those large OEM tier ones have realized that as well. So this sort of falls into everyone's, need, is that we need a place, we need access to innovation, but also to the OEMs. But we also need to be able, as an OEM, I need to see what's really out there and what the real innovation, what the real ability is, and what the real cost is too, as well, because that's what's part of what they're trying to drive. And so they've broken down a lot of those traditional barriers, like most of them have, so that they can, bring in some engineers, like you say, build up that audio team and give them opportunities. So I think that's ideally timed for what you're trying to build here, for sure. Um, what is your biggest challenges to bringing more OEMs in? I mean, you've got one, will have more. I think the reason that you'll have more is that trend has changed, is that they'll be more interested in developing things in this way, or at least trying ideas in that way. Is there a significant challenge that you're trying to overcome to bring an OEM
yeah, it's a
into
good
the group?
question. So believe me, we have many that if you talk to the audio teams at the OEM, and they say, we want to be a part of this, we want to
Yeah,
join this.
yeah.
But the challenges had been, I'd say for many of them were, okay, what is this? We didn't budget for this year.
Right, yeah,
What,
yeah.
can you explain? I need to go to my management and explain, all these things. And we even went to the extent of, listing out all of the equipment that we have in this facility, including this, vehicle development buck, and said, look, for, your annual fee, this would be a fraction of the cost for you to utilize this equipment, without having to buy it on your own, right? So this is why we're making it a lot easier for the OEMs to join through, vehicle, a loaner donation. So the idea is that every 12 to 18 months, they change out the vehicle, because it's a win-win situation, because we have so many projects and less vehicles to implement those projects on. So if we can if we make it easier for the OEMs to join through vehicle donation, and then we can execute on these projects, it's a win-win really for everybody. So that's been the challenge, and I think we're just now starting to solve that.
Well, briefly, uh, what's all in the building there? And you are also preparing a building in Santa Clara, right?
That's right. Well, in San Rafael,
San
in the
Rafael,
Bay.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this was the primary site. We launched this site 2 years ago. This was the the Audio Foundry site. It's quite big. It definitely would encourage, if anybody's in Europe or UK or in Wales on Thursday, we welcome to come join us. But we this was the primary site. We just opened up a satellite office in San Rafael, which is about California, which is about 20 minutes north of the Golden Gate Bridge. And really, it's a much smaller site. It does have, there's a Tymphany building there, which has access to some of the tools, but specifically the Audio Foundry will have two very large vehicle bays to do work on. And again, so if you want to think of it as a gym membership, right? If you're a member, you turn up, you have access to that site, to the tools, and then also to some of the on-site team that we have there. So that's what we have there. We have a couple other members that are also looking at introducing some space at their locations, because one of the things with this site, it's we have so many members that are living at a global level.
Yes.
That they can't always come here to do all the projects. So many of the members said, well, we love this, but can we open up a facility at our site? dedicated vehicle bay or an innovation space or even a conference room? And we said, absolutely. So now all of a sudden you have all these Audio Foundry satellite offices now starting to go up. So we're talking to some of our members in Sweden and in France and in Taiwan that are also looking to set up facilities. And we're also now heavily considering one in the Detroit area as well.
That's what I was about to ask is they make cars in Detroit also.
They do.
So might be a good
You do.
Don't
place.
give away any secrets, Roger.
I know we just broke that news here, folks. So, which is, from now that it's not necessarily decentralized in terms of the groups of tiers that are of the supplier groups, but having a space to work in is important. It's just a garage that you trust or has some tools or some capability would be great to have in all of the locations that you're talking about, so that you didn't have to go out on a one-time basis and find something. Or I think the other thing I would encourage is test tracks. A lot of the things that we have to test now are because the car is, moving and making noise and seeing obstacles. And that would be the next thing, if it's possible to, if you locate in Detroit, locate near a test track. That would be lovely.
Yeah.
I think so too.
I think I could suggest a few, but because whoever's going to start a new company or start a new business or start a new adventure up in Detroit is going to have to take into account all of that, and you're renting space most of the time.
That's right.
So I think that would be a great place. Go ahead. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I think one of the other incentives here too is these satellite offices, we're heavily encouraging the teams when they do the project is to do it at one of these facilities and basically get out of the mothership, right? Because if we're all about innovation and trying something new and different, we've seen the creativeness of those teams that when they're offsite, thinking about things differently is more impactful than them doing it at their own site.
Well, yeah, and it's also that feeling of big brother sometimes. Like, can I just think freely right now outside of it so I don't have to go through the routines? And that's sometimes the overreaching problem is I got to be careful, but I can be less worried if I'm thinking in a free space like that. Do you have members do you have your own location in the Detroit area, or do you have members that would be sharing their space in Detroit?
Not yet. We're heavily considering this.
Okay.
Both at Tymphany level and the Audio Foundry level. It makes a lot of sense. And in fact, yeah, this has recently came up to have this necessity to be in Detroit. So yeah, we'll definitely have that at some point.
Well, okay. Tymphany's a big part of this. Tymphany's manufacturing is primarily in Asia. Does it have any in the North American area?
Yeah, in fact, so yeah, we have our for automotive, our primary sites are China, Thailand, the Czech Republic in Europe, and then also actually a newly acquired facility in the Midwest in US, Midwest US. So
that's yeah. So it sounds like there's a good chance that you could leverage some of your now new North American location-ish towards it, even though it may not be in the state of Michigan, it may be closer than being across the country. So that's encouraging.
Yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah, so I guess that's kind of what's coming up next for you guys. What else? I mean, we've talked about the idea of multi-sensory thing. Is there anything that we've missed that is coming along, or what do you think is next for the cabin besides what we've already talked about? We talked about artificial intelligence. I think that's going to come into play. Do you have probably some companies that are starting to appear on your radar to be part of the group? Is there any, in perception of sound, does that become part of what your group is working on, or do you have any members that work on perception of the sound or the actual feedback from the listener and the driver in the car? Is that something that's an area that needs to be filled in for you, or is it?
no, maybe not so much that specifically, but I definitely, this idea of sensor fusion, as I mentioned, I mean, that seems to be a very, front of mind topic. But, again, it's sort of, people talk about it as this is the next thing, but, at the end of the day, people are, at OEMs or tier ones, I mean, they're still trying to solve I need to deliver this vehicle, right? So there's still a lot of that, but I think, people are starting to talk about this idea of, what if through a sensor fusion sort of experience.
Yeah.
So I think there's more of that, and then very simple things too, like this conferencing in the vehicle, idea. This is, this.
Yeah, conferencing in a Waymo is what you're talking about, or what's the concept?
Or
Oh,
in any.
Yeah, who doesn't take a call while they're driving?
Yes,
But
yes.
but here's what's interesting. We had done this product brief, and it's funny because we always think about conferencing in the vehicle while you're driving. But what was one of the conclusions that came out of this was like, think about all the times that you're conferencing in a static position, right? You're taking your kid to soccer practice, and
pulls over and sorry, my kid's in swim class. I pulled over to the side of the road.
Right. You get in the passenger seat, you put the seat all the way back, right? I mean, it's a fine experience. Or if you're, I myself, was on family holiday last summer and was in a very small Airbnb, and I needed to take a call. So I went out to the vehicle to go take, my private conference room, right? To take a call. And you think about all the times that you actually do that, those are two different experiences, right? One when you're driving and one when you're in a static position. And those are different use cases. Those are completely different use cases.
And Matt, do you guys get into any type of focus groups, from a product perspective where, you look at, real potential customers, in terms of the technologies and what they, you bring them the idea, and you get feedback from the market. Is that something that the Audio Foundry does?
We haven't done it as a collective for the Audio Foundry yet. I mean, that is available, as I said. So it's nice. We have the Car Lab was the company I had referenced earlier. This is what they do. They do product planning on the front end and consumer research on the back end. And in fact, we had just done a research study, testing different types of technologies in the market, and it was very, very, very insightful. But we make that that the Car Lab is available to the Audio Foundry members if they want to do something, or research can be expensive. So the idea to do shared research amongst members. So and it's another benefit, right, of the Audio Foundries. You can share the cost in order to go test something or test your concept out.
Yeah, no, that's a good idea.
So a company like Car Lab, it is a member of the Audio Foundry? It pays the gym membership?
So, yeah.
All right. Okay. All right. That's cool. Yeah. We have a few minutes left, and I think we've kind of touched on everything, but you've talked about the locations. You have equipment, you have printers, 3D printing material. You have the ability to 3D print as well. And okay.
We do. Both the US site and this site has a very large 3D printing farm here, a metal shop, a wood shop, all the tools you would need to do and then of course the rig.
We see the rig.
This is the Automotive Audio Development Buck. What's interesting about this, and I know you guys have seen it before, but it breaks down into 5 different pieces, and it's got these black ABS panels throughout the vehicle, so you can experiment with non-traditional audio hardware in non-traditional locations. Yeah.
What about? And we haven't got much time, but I'll just touch on the virtual simulation of a lot of things. Do you have members who are doing that for you? Because there's a lot of need now to do it virtually, especially at the OEMs, because they, like the cost is the cost, and you can't build more than one half the time. Do you have members that are doing that for you, or do you need them?
We don't know that. So that one would be an interesting one. Like if we're building out our version of the ecosystem, like I said, we're looking for, unique bits in every category. That would be one that would be missing. So
and before we close out, what are your gym membership fees?
$50K for full Zoot, which would give you access to all the facilities and more time in it. There's a $20K, which is the same as the $50K, just less time.
Yeah. Okay.
There is a $5K project by project fee, like if you want to be a part of it and do a project, and then more for the OEM, it's vehicle loan or donation at an annual level. But again, that comes with, you still need a wrench. You still need to,
Yeah,
you know,
you need to
OEMs
do
still need to
something.
be a part of it. It's not drop off a car and then
Right,
pick it
because
up
part
when it's
of
done.
any simulation is validation, so you're going to need something. Quick question that I didn't ask, I was curious about, and I've forgotten what the answer is. When you had a car at CES, who gave you that car? Did that car come with a project, or was it an OEM giving you that car?
No, that was a great project. That was Sonified had owned the car. They had their exciter technology in it. This is sort of the beauty of the membership, is that we sort of initiated a project around that vehicle. So we brought in, Tymphany hardware, and we brought in, Duroc, their digital audio solutions, and then Denon is the brand, right? That participated in that. So it was a demo vehicle of the four companies. And it was, again, just the benefit of having it in that vehicle. In fact, we then roadshowed that vehicle, to all the different OEMs in Northern California, Southern California, Detroit. And again, it's another, benefit to the Audio Foundry. Are we, collectively selling that solution? Well, the answer is really no. I mean, unless someone wanted it, but it was really meant to show what could be if you collaborate, right? Those are sort of the bases of the projects.
Okay,
And Matt, you've got this event coming up on Thursday. After that, what are your big milestone events for the remainder of 2025?
Yeah, so we typically, the three major events. So we always do an annual event, which is Thursday of this week. CES is a big show. We have a very large booth at CES every year now. And then of course AES every other year. Those are the big ones. And then we meet as a membership collective, as I said, once a month, sort of thing. The more in membership dollars, I guess, the more we can do too, right? I mean, we're not for profit, by the way. So, what the membership really pays for us to hang out with each other and have fun and experiment and work on cool technologies, right?
So you go to the CES, that's funded by the membership.
Yes. Yeah.
So on and so on. Okay, great. And we're going to look forward to it. We always do. It's good to see what you've got and what's coming new. And I'm excited to hear after Thursday who's new. So we'll find out soon.
Happy to share that with you.
Appreciate that. Thanks again, Matt. I appreciate you doing this for us, and hopefully we'll do it again as well. I think we've answered most of the questions. I know that the other thing that may be coming up for you is that there will be an AES Automotive Audio Conference next year in Detroit. So we hope to see you, since you sort of emerged through that conference. I'd love to see you guys come back and put it on again. And we're hoping to have it in downtown Detroit in the summer of 2026. So everybody can look forward to that as well. And I appreciate your time today, Dave. Thank you for staying up for it with us, and Steve as well. I think that's mostly it. And we know what you're doing, what the Audio Product Development Alliance is going to be doing next month is a talk about Bluetooth LE audio, and then we'll talk again about what tariffs are and what they mean to us in August. They change from day to day, so we'll see what's going on in August. So appreciate it, everybody.
Yeah,
thank
Matt,
you so
thank you
much.
very much. It was very
Thanks,
insightful.
My pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity. It was great talking to you.
This video will be up on our YouTube channel, so you can watch again and again and add comments to our, join the LinkedIn group. We can keep the conversation going there and engage with all of our members, as well as check out the video often and add more questions if you've got it. So we appreciate that. Like us and join us and keep tuned. Stay tuned. We have more coming, and we hope to see everybody later in the year, and also at some live events coming up for the APDA. We're definitely going to be at the CES along with everybody else, so we'll look for you there. And thank you, everyone. I appreciate it. Hope you have a good night and day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.
Bye.